Woo! What's going on, guys? Almost Forum coming at you guys today with another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Detroit Lions and their year in review for 2021. Obviously, it was a very bad year. 3-13-1 was our record. They threw in that extra week for the NFL schedule. It was a very different year. COVID ran rampant through this year. We had a ton of injuries, and it wasn't just Detroit Lions. It was everybody from all 32 teams. Just COVID, especially hitting now, and lots and lots of injuries. And I'm going to start this off. This is probably going to be a two-part series. Going to be talking about the offense and maybe a little bit of special teams today. Throw some coaches in there, and then I'm going to go defense for my next video, and I'll talk about the year in review for the defense. But we're going to hit on offense on this video, and it's the part one. So obviously you guys know Matt Patricia, Bob Quinn gone out the door, and in comes Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell. Brad Holmes coming from a pretty good organization in the LA Rams. Brad Holmes was Les Snead's, their GM's right-hand man. He took over some drafts for the LA Rams, drafted some really good players in that organization. A couple of them being Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. It was even a big part of Jared Goff coming to the LA Rams. And then we brought in Dan Campbell. He was an interim. He was a player, played for the New York Giants, Dallas Cowboys, Detroit Lions. He was on part of the 0-16 team, and became a coach a few years after he retired, or a year after, I forget, after he retired. Played for the Saints as well too, but never really strapped up for the Saints. But he did win a ring, but I don't think he really played. But I'm not even sure if he even got a ring the year they won. It doesn't even matter. But ended up becoming a coach, becoming a tight ends coach for the Miami Dolphins. And then he became the interim head coach over there, won a few games, was known as a tough guy, known as a player's coach. And then he did so well, he turned some heads over there in Miami that Sean Payton, the New Orleans Saints coach, brought him over. And he became the tight ends coach there and an assistant head coach. So not just the tight ends coach. Did some good things over there in New Orleans as a coach. We ended up hiring him when Matt Patricia got the boot out the door, and then Bob Quinn, and then in comes Brad Holmes. Whole new regime, whole new everything. We started over from scratch, and it just we brought over some coaches, obviously guys like Anthony Lynn, who became an OC here. You guys know who Anthony Lynn is. Been in the Chargers organization, was a Buffalo offensive coordinator over there. He played in the NFL too as well. He was a running back. He played for Broncos, if I can remember. Played for a couple teams, I think, Anthony Lynn. Deuce Staley, another former football player, played for the Eagles, most notably. Running back coach, assistant head coach to Dan Campbell. Mark Brunell, a Jacksonville Jaguar quarterback, really good quarterback. Pretty much underrated, but became a quarterback coach here. Tanner Engstrand, offensive quality control guy. Hank Fraley, he was a holdover from the old regime. One of the best, I think, O-line coaches in the NFL today. Ben Johnson, an offensive coordinator, passing attack guy that got promoted to that, but he was a tight ends coach at first, and he's worked with wide receivers. He's drawn up plays in the NFL before. He's a guy to keep an eye on. Steve Oliver, another offensive quality control guy. Deontay Pennell, a minority coach assistantship guy. Antoine Randall, wide receiver coach. Most notably, I remember him playing quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers and being the wide receiver coach in Tampa Bay. And then there was guys like Seth Ryan, who was an assistant wide receiver coach too. So just a whole new changeover for the Detroit Lions. And it all started with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell. So these guys come in, and guys like Matthew Stafford go up to these guys and say, listen, I request I be traded. So the first thing these guys do is they look for trade partners. We had all kinds of rumors going around that was going to be this team, that team was going to be the Carolina Panthers, the Washington football team. There was lots of teams. There was a nice handful of teams that were offering up draft picks and or players. The Detroit Lions, Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell ended up going with the best offer that they thought they could, and that ended up being acquiring Jared Goff. Jared Goff, a third round pick for last year's draft, who was Ifeatu Melifonwu, the cornerback out of Syracuse. Pretty sure that's who we picked up, and 2 future first round picks. One being this year, the first round pick. We got to find out where the LA Rams end up being after it's all said and done. And then 2023, another first round pick for the same LA Rams. So ended up getting 3 picks and a player. Ended up getting a quarterback that a lot of people did not like, myself included. It was a guy that was kind of on a downslide, if you want to say, for the LA Rams. There was all kinds of things going on in that organization. He wasn't getting along with Sean McVay and or players. Don't really know the players he wasn't getting along with, but there were some things going on in the organization that it was just time for Jared Goff to go. And Brad Holmes being a part of bringing in Jared Goff back in 2000, I believe it was 2016. Don't quote me on that, but he brought him in, and then he ended up reacquiring him again as a Detroit Lion. So Brad Holmes has a little thing for Jared Goff. Not sure how deep that love affair is, but he's got something for him. He thinks he's something. And to tell you the truth, at the beginning of this year, I don't really know what it was that we saw, but we saw really bad Jared Goff at the beginning of this year. It was a train wreck. Now, we'll throw some stats out, okay? He had 14 starts this year, 67.2% completion percentage, which I think was his best ever as a professional. 3,245 yards and 19 touchdowns. 8 picks, which is not bad. 35 sacks, one of his highest ever, getting sacked. And I thought that number was a little high, but it was true. So our O-line did play well, but not as good as I thought they did. They weren't bad, though. And only 87 rush yards, no touchdowns. Now, you look at those numbers and you're like, wow, those are terrible. From a starting position guy, a quarterback in the NFL who was a former first-round pick, you're like, wow, okay, that's not good. That is not good at all. When Jared Goff came in here, he was, how can I put this? How can I put this lightly? He was a guy that he seemed that there was a lack of confidence in his play, in the way he talked, everything about it. It's like it took him some time to get used to being a Detroit Lion. He wasn't throwing really. He was fumbling the ball. He had like 9 fumbles in his first 10 games or 11 games or whatever it was. He was throwing picks. He threw like 6 picks in his first 9-10 games. He was a turnover machine. He wasn't getting the ball in the end zone. Dan Campbell decides to take over in week 9, I believe it was, or week 10, halfway through the season somewhat, and everything changed. He brought over Ben Johnson, the tight end coach, to be the passing attack coordinator. He told Anthony Lynn to beat it. He didn't fire him right away. He ended up getting fired, but he kept him on staff and kept him up in the booth. I don't know what his role became after Anthony Lynn was kind of demoted from the OC, but it wasn't good. But whatever it was, Ben Johnson drawing up plays. They brought over Josh Reynolds, a guy that played in LA with Jared Goff before, who was released by the Tennessee Titans. And we ended up picking up because we had the number 1 waiver. We ended up grabbing him. This confidence boost just hit Jared Goff through the roof. It was just an absolute confidence boost that I've never seen before. Because I was ready to say, I'm done. I don't care about the cap hit with Jared Goff. I'm out. He got better the last 5-6 games to the point where he was putting up not eye-popping numbers where he was throwing a bunch of yards, but he was getting the ball in the end zone. He ended up with like 11 touchdowns, 12 touchdowns in the last like 5-6 weeks. He wasn't throwing picks. He threw like 2 picks. His quarterback rating was through the roof. His completion percentage was through the roof. He just wasn't putting up big yards because they were running the football. They were a pretty balanced offense, to tell you the truth. And we'll get to that in a bit too, but we're just talking about quarterbacks. But he became this confident quarterback with a lot of swagger and just playing so much better. Now to a point where I think, I'm not saying that he is the guy, but they really now need to take a look at him for 2022. His contract kind of says that we can't get rid of him, even though you can do whatever you want, but you don't want to take too much dead cap. You want to save as much money as you can. So kind of getting rid of him right now is kind of not going to happen. But it came down to a point where I'm like, okay, let's build around him because he played so much better. And especially with the emergence of Amon-Ra St. Brown too. So he had a couple weapons his way, even though a couple guys went down. And we'll get on that too. But he just played with the confidence in his last month and a half of football. That was very eye-opening. It was like you had a vote of confidence in him. You finally seen, okay, this kid looks like a number one pick. You know, he's got so much work to do, but he's got some talent. He was making throws that you never seen at the beginning of the year. He was doing things that were just totally not him. And I just want to say that I'm okay with, let's see what we can build around Jared Goff for 2022. I'm not saying he's the guy, but I'm saying I think he deserves another shot. He talked himself or played himself into that, right? Now we'll talk about some running backs. You guys know with DeAndre Swift, a guy that I like a lot. 151 rushes at 617 yards, 5 touchdowns, 4.1 yards per carry, 425 receiving yards, 62 catches. He was probably on his way to catch about 90 to 100 balls at one point. He missed like 4 or 5 games, so he was on his way to catching a ton of footballs, 78 targets too. So that's impressive. And then he had 2 touchdowns through the air as well. So 7 touchdowns on the ground, but a guy that's got a plethora of talent, but just can't stay healthy. He just can't stay healthy, and they're going to have to be thinking about in the future about what they're going to do with this guy. I'm not saying that we have to get rid of him, but he's a guy that needs to stay healthy. I don't think he's going anywhere right now, but it's a guy that this organization is definitely going to be keeping an eye on. He can't miss any more time. He's missed enough games already in his early 2 years. He missed 4 this year. Year before he missed another handful too. So let's say he missed about 8 or 9 games altogether. Can't have that anymore. We need healthy guys. But he's got so much talent. But he's got a contract coming up in a couple years. It's going to be something to keep an eye on. Then we brought in Jamal Williams, the ex-Green Bay Packer, who was a guy 153 yards rushing, 153 rushes at 601 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, 42 for first down. Started like 11 games. This regime really liked what they saw in Jamal Williams at a 3.9 yards per carry. Caught 26 balls on 28 targets with 157 yards, no touchdowns. But he's a guy that's a do-it-all guy. A great character, runs hard, doesn't fumble. He did have 1 fumble this year in his whole career, but he didn't lose it. It was his only fumble of his career. But they got it back. But I was arguing with guys on Twitter about this guy. There was a guy on there saying that he's easily replaceable. Okay, a guy like this, I don't think is easily replaceable because he's got such good character. He runs very hard. He's a phenomenal, underrated blocker. He catches the ball. He does this. He's a coach's player. You love a player like Jamal Williams. Now, there's guys that can replace him, but to say that he's an easily replaceable player, it's not even close. He's just a really good football player, but he's a guy that could be shipped. Okay, I'm not saying they need to, but he's only here for 1 more year. With the eye that Brad Holmes has for bringing in talent at running back, don't be shocked if this guy gets traded. I don't think he's going to, and I don't think we need to, but you never know. You might be able to trade him for a 5th round pick, 4th round pick, maybe 5th round. I don't even know. I'm not saying I want him gone, but I'm just saying it's a possibility because we got some young guys waiting in the wings. And then we had Craig Reynolds, who they brought over, man, who was literally sitting on his couch watching Netflix. and he got that nickname Netflix and Chill from Deuce Staley. Over 230 yards on the ground, started 2 games, became a fan favorite right away. Then they drafted Jamar Jefferson in the draft, 2021 draft at Oregon State in the 7th round, who looked like he was going to get some playing time. Ended up getting beat up a bit, getting hurt, COVID, whatever. Then they brought over Godwin Igbuke, who was a safety, brought him over to play some running back. It was really he contributed a lot in special teams, and had a couple opportunities to run and catch the football on the field as well. Fumbled a little bit too much. I think he had a case of the fumbles a bit, but he contributed. He could be a guy that could be shown the door, though. They got some guys waiting in the wings. They got Craig Reynolds coming back. Jamar Jefferson's coming back. Swift, obviously. Jamal Williams. They could be making some moves. Who knows? But you always have to replenish the running back room, because it's just, you can't have enough running backs because guys drop. Every one of these guys got hurt last year, except I think Craig Reynolds. So you have to have a plethora, a stable of running backs. Onto the O-line. It doesn't really need to be touched. I don't think adding competition is always a must, but this is a really, really strong unit. They ran the ball well. I thought they protected Goff a little bit better. The 35 sacks is, it's not crazy concerning, but it's always concerning when your quarterback gets sacked. But they're a unit that I don't think needs to be really touched. They're an offensive line that's pretty solid with Taylor Decker at left tackle, Jonah Jackson, Frank Ragnow, one of the best centers in the league. We lost him early as well too. Right guard Halaputi Vaitai played some good right guard for us. I think didn't even get hurt this year, which was nice. And then right tackle Penei Sewell, the rookie out of Oregon, who had to go over to left tackle at the beginning of the year because Taylor Decker went down. And then Lions fans erupted when we were going to move him back to right tackle because he didn't look good in the preseason, and he kind of struggled a bit for a month. And then he was one of the best right tackles in the league, best offensive tackles in the league for the rest of the season. Just an absolute home run of a pick by Brad Holmes as well. And you really have to look forward to that. I'm looking forward to that guy just locking it down for the next 10, 12 years. Really good pick. Then you got guys who had to step in for Ragnow because he went down. Evan Brown goes down. Ryan McCollum, who's kind of an offensive guard center, had to play some center. Even threw Jonah Jackson in at the last game of the year at center. So a very versatile group. Tommy Kramer, a guy they brought over from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish as a UDFA. And then Will Holden, another tackle. Matt Nelson, who's a guy that I think needs to be replaced. I think he was the worst offensive lineman in our group. I think he needs to go. I think they will find a replacement for Matt Nelson this year. But at the end of it all, PFF ranked this O-line unit a 13th ranked unit in the NFL. You can't really, for a team that was 3-13-1, it was one of our strongest points. So kudos to Brad Holmes and those guys for keeping most of these guys intact. There was some problems, obviously, with COVID and some injuries with the Ragnow, with Decker getting banged up. But all in all, I think it was a very nice offensive line. Now on the tight end, TJ Hawkinson, another guy that we're going to have to really keep an eye on, a guy that you like, but a guy that just can't stay healthy at all. 61 catches on 84 targets, 583 yards, 4 touchdowns, missed 5 games again, 9 in 3 years. So it's a guy that just can't stay healthy, but arguably he's a top 5 tight end in the NFL behind guys like Kittle, Kelsey, Mark Andrews, Darren Waller. He's right around there. Not quite as good as those guys, but he's just a little bit below those guys. So he's arguably a top 5, but a guaranteed top 10, top 7 tight end in the NFL. Just another guy that needs to stay healthy, and another guy that's going to demand some money in the next couple of years. What will this new regime do? Will they end up getting rid of him and end up trading him for some assets? It's a high possibility. It really is. I feel like I have to remind myself or give myself an awareness. Hey, this could happen. This could happen. He could get traded. I know guys fall in love with guys like this. We fall in love with guys like T.J. Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift. We this is a business. These guys could possibly be traded one day. Just saying. And then Brock Wright had to kind of step in. We had Darren Fells. I think he ended up asking for a trade. I think we ended up releasing him because kind of tough to trade a guy like that. We ended up releasing him. I don't even know who picked him up. And then Brock Wright, another UDFA from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish that Bradholm picked up as a rookie. Had 12 catches on 17 targets for 117 yards and a couple touchdowns. Looked athletic out there, became tight end too, especially when Hawkinson went down, especially when Fells was gone. Then he came into the tight end too, and then Hawk went down, he became tight end one. So Brock Wright's a guy that's probably going to get re-signed, I guess. You could probably find somebody who can do what he did, but I really like the fact that he stepped up as a tight end number one when it was all said and done. But he's a guy that could be replaced. I still like the guy Hunter Bryant that the Detroit Lions picked up a couple years ago, but a guy that just can't stay on the field. He's always hurt, but they still have him on the squad. So I think they like him. They don't know what to do with him because he just can't stay healthy. He's probably on it. He's probably going to get either released or they're going to give him one more shot. Who knows? Now on to the wide receivers. And the wide receiver room at the beginning of this year was absolutely ridiculous. That's why I came in with this attitude that they were almost tanking. Okay, this is why I kind of have that little theory still in the back of my head. What they were doing was it's not that they weren't trying to win. It's just that putting that type of product out there was like, what are they doing? Acquiring a quarterback like Goff that was on the downslide of his career, bringing in those wide receivers they brought in, guys like Tyrell Williams ended up getting hurt, had a little bit of talent though, but ended up getting banged up. First game of the year, done. Had to eventually release him. Brought in guys like Brashad Perryman, who's had maybe 5-6 good games in his whole NFL career. That's been on a bunch of teams like Baltimore, Tampa Bay, Washington, Cleveland. Could never really get his feet set on an NFL team. Just had that little 5-6 game run in Tampa Bay where Antoine Randall was his wide receiver coach, and we ended up bringing him in, and we ended up wasting $2 million on this kid. He couldn't even make it He couldn't even make it to September. This guy couldn't even make it to September. He ended up getting dropped. Chicago picked him up. Tampa Bay ended up picking him up, and he's had a couple, I guess, decent catches for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he's still not a good wide receiver. But those were going to be our 1 and 2 guys, because guys like Danny Amendola were gone. Guys like Marvin Jones were history. Stafford rolled. They were just all gone. So this wide receiver room was a mess. We ended up drafting Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 4th round. About a 6'1", 200-pound wide receiver out of USC that was physical, not fast, but ended up being an absolute boss on the field. He had a really slow first half, really slow, didn't do nothing actually. I ended up having 90 catches on 119 targets, 912 yards, 5 touchdowns, 48 first down catches at 10.1 yards per catch. Even had 7 rushes for 61 yards and a touchdown. Ended up breaking all kinds of records for the Detroit Lions. Ended up surpassing Roy Williams' rookie record. Ended up surpassing Calvin Johnson in some records. Ended up being in company with guys like Randy Moss and Odell Beckham Jr. for being a rookie and having 8+ catches, 90 yards and a touchdown. He broke that record actually with five straight games, and those guys had 4 straight games. So he became this elite wide receiver in the second half, and he is elite right now. Is he going to stay elite? That's to be determined. But he ended up becoming an elite wide receiver. He was an absolute animal for the Detroit Lions, and it's just not talked about enough. It's disrespectful. But then we brought in Josh Reynolds, who ended up getting 49 targets on 29 catches for 396 yards, 16.1 yards per catch for Detroit, and then 2 touchdowns. He had a couple of games with the Tennessee Titans, didn't really do much over there. He ended up guy that was with Jared Goff in LA, and familiarity is key in the NFL. It's a big thing. And then we brought in Khalif Raymond, and another kind of a cast off. Played on like a bunch of different teams: Denver, the Jets, the Giants, Tennessee Titans. Was a kick returner, punt returner. Had about 20 catches until he came. 20 catches in 4 years until he came over to Detroit. Ended up getting 48 catches this year on 71 targets, 576 yards, 4 touchdowns. Took back some kicks and some punts. 28 first down catches. Ended up becoming a guy that I think could maybe become our number 4 wide receiver. He's even maybe kind of talked himself or played himself into that number 3 role. I'm not saying he can't be replaced, but he's a guy that is definitely should definitely come back, and he's going to get a pay raise. I just don't know how much. And then we ended up trading for guys like Trinity Benson. Ended up giving a 5th and a 7th round pick. I was upset losing the 5th, but we ended up getting the player and a future 6th in 2023. So, but he only had like 10 catches for 100 yards. He didn't do nothing, and he was dragged through the mud by Lions fans, as he should. Brad Holmes takes the L on that one. Then they brought over Kadaro Hodge from Cleveland, more of a special team guy, a big guy. Tom Kennedy, who's been with us for a bit, had a couple catches. Then Javon McKinley, another undrafted free agent out of Notre Dame, who was a practice squad guy who ended up coming into a couple games. Had a really nice 1 game in preseason, had a touchdown and a few catches. So looks like he got a little bit of talent, but it's a to be determined. Then Quintez Cephas went up going down with a collar injury. Ended up going down with a collarbone injury. He looked like he was on his way to at least being better in his rookie year. He had 15 catches for 204 yards on 13.6 yards per catch and a couple touchdowns. But he only ended up playing like 5-6 games. So he looks like he was going to be. It looks like he was improving from his rookie year though. So he's probably going to be literally talked about in 2022 as a possible number 2, number 3 guy in this system. And then we'll leave it at the special teams at the end. Okay, we'll leave it at the end for the special teams. Jack Fox is one of the best punters in the league. You know, we're not going to get too much in this in the special teams, but Jack Fox is special. Had a couple passes too as well. One of the best legs in the game. You really don't want to see your punter out there all day, but if you want to see somebody out there, it's Jack Fox. So, and then our kicking game was crazy. Matt Prater ended up wanting out too because he didn't want to be part of a rebuild. They didn't want to sign him because I think he was going to be a little bit expensive. And Brad Holmes and company, they were not paying a bunch of money for a kicker or for anybody for that matter in the first year, especially in a build, rebuild, or a retool, whatever you want to call it. And Lions fans, whatever you want to call it, you want to call this a rebuild, a retool, or just a build in itself, do it. Don't let anybody else tell you differently, okay? If you think this is a rebuild, call it a rebuild. You think it's a retool, build. Call it whatever the hell you want. Don't let anybody tell you what it is, okay? This is just a build. That's what I like to call it. And I'm not saying that I'm 100% right, but that's what I want to call it. If someone wants to call it a retool, call it that. But we're getting off topic. And so Prater left. Prater ended up leaving, going to Arizona. Now he's in the playoffs. He going to get a little bit of money from Arizona. We weren't paying him. We went through guys like Randy Bullock from Tennessee, who actually plays for Tennessee now and is actually having a good year. Randy Bullock, Zane Gonzalez, who has played for Carolina, Arizona as well. Ryan Santoso, a guy that kicked for Carolina, maybe someone else. I don't know. We ended up, those 3 guys were train wrecks. I thought we should have kept Randy Bullock. I think he was that bad, but he did miss a couple kicks. And he ended up playing better for the Titans now. Now he's their kicker. And then we ended up settling on a guy, Austin Siebert, who was a kicker for the Cincinnati Bengals. Ended up getting hurt. And we're like, this is November now. We're like, are we ever going to find a kicker? We ended up getting a guy named Riley Patterson, kid out of Memphis. I think was it the Cowboys who had him? I don't quote me who had him. We plucked him off the Patriots practice squad, but he was on another team. I don't know if it was the Cowboys or the Chargers. I could be wrong. Correct me, whatever it was, guys. But we ended up getting Riley Patterson. He ended up booting a bunch of balls for us. I think he ended up missing 1 kick out of I don't know how many. He should be our guy going into 2022. Buy Austin Siebert, buy anybody else. Obviously, you got to bring somebody in for some competition because you got to have 2 or 3 guys kicking the ball. But Riley Patterson should be the Detroit Lions kicker for the near future. But that's it, guys. That's the whole offense in a nutshell. That's the whole offense in a nutshell. We had some things that were very negative, but things that were very positive, like Jared Goff playing a little better in the second half of the year, finding a running game. We found somewhat of a wide receiver unit. Okay, believe it or not, we actually did, which is insane. We found some guys. I think we still need 1 or 2 guys, new faces in that system. Tight end, I think is going to be a little bit. It's going to be a little bit different coming into 2022. It's obviously going to be Hawkinson. He's not really going anywhere just yet, but don't be surprised if some moves are made. And then the O-line I think is pretty solid. Bring in some competition at guard. Find a new guy for Matt Nelson. Everything else is all good. Special teams, don't touch it. Jack Fox and Riley Patterson. And that's it, guys. Thanks for the video. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to hit the subscription on the bottom right. Get all my videos and hit the notification bell. Get those too. And like and comment. It's all about the likes and comments. Let's go. Detroit Lions, part 2 coming up. Boom.